Since Repair Clinic encourages you to perform this procedure safely, a warning icon will appear when you should use caution. Many Cub Cadet Chipper Shredder repairs will require some disassembly of the product. These are the tools you'll need to fully disassemble and reassemble the chipper shredder. To uninstall the chute assembly, first place a towel at the bottom of the chute to prevent the chute mounting bolts from falling into the impeller housing. Reaching into the chute, use a 7/16" wrench to secure the bolt, then use a 7/16" socket to unthread the nut. Repeat for the second nut and bolt. With the bolts removed, you can pull the lock rod out to fully release the upper chute. With the upper chute assembly detached, you can use the 7/16" wrench and socket to uninstall the nuts and bolts to release the hinge. Use channel lock pliers to compress the lock rod spring, then use needle nose pliers to pull out the retaining pin. Slide off the washer and spring and remove the rod. Next, use the 7/16" wrench and socket to remove the two nuts and bolts, securing the lower chute to the support. Use a 3/8" socket to unthread the bolts securing the support to the base, and set the support aside. Now use a 1/2" wrench to fully unthread the two upper mounting nuts, securing the chute to the impeller housing. Loosen the lower nut, and you can lift off the chute. To reinstall the chute assembly, slide the lower chute onto the lower mounting bolt behind the washer and nut, then align it on the upper bolts. Slide the washers onto the upper bolts, then rethread and tighten all of the nuts. Before you reinstall the support, confirm the washers are on the mounting bolts. Align the support on the base, then thread and tighten the bolts to secure. Insert the two bolts which secure the lower chute to the support. The shorter bolt goes in the front. Slide the washer onto the rear bolt, then thread and tighten the nut. Thread and tighten the nut on the front bolt. Reinstall the lock rod by inserting it through the hole in the lower chute. Slide on the spring and washer, then insert the rod through the opposite hole. Now compress the spring enough to insert the retaining pin into the rod. Position the hinge on the outside of the lower chute, then secure it with the nuts and bolts. Align the upper chute on the lower chute, making sure the lock rod is snapped into place. Place the towel back in the lower chute to prevent the bolts falling into the impeller. Insert the two mounting bolts from inside the chute, then thread and tighten the nuts. Remove the towel. If you need to remove the hopper assembly, use the 1/2-inch wrench to secure the bolts and the 1/2-inch socket to unthread the nuts, securing the hopper assembly support plate to the impeller housing. Using a 1/2-inch socket, unthread the 6 mounting nuts securing the front of the hopper assembly to the housing. With the nuts unthreaded, tilt the hopper assembly back and lift up to fully detach the assembly from the bolts. The shredder plate can now be detached as well. To remove the discharge chute, unthread the 2 retaining knob screws securing the bottom of the chute. Use the 7/16" wrench to secure the chute's mounting bolt, then use the 7/16" socket to fully unthread the nut. Slide out the bolt and you can detach the chute and remove the spacers from the chute. To access the impeller assembly, use the needle nose pliers to pull out the retaining pin securing the shredder screen pin and slide the pin out. Next, use the 1/2-inch socket, a small flathead screwdriver, and the needle nose pliers to remove the upper mounting screws securing the outer flail housing. With the tow bar installed, tip the chipper shredder back and set a weight on the tow bar to hold it down. Now, using the 1/2-inch socket and the 1/2-inch wrench, remove the 10 remaining nuts and bolts securing the outer housing to the inner housing. With all of the nuts and bolts uninstalled, fully detach the outer flail housing and set the shredder screen aside. To uninstall the impeller assembly, first align a 2x4 piece of wood to prevent the impeller from rotating. Use a 9/16" 6-point socket with a 1/2-inch driver to unthread the center mounting bolt securing the impeller. This will require some effort. Reposition the wood support. Now use a 5/8" socket to thread a dedicated impeller removal tool into the center bolt screw hole. The bottom of the tool will then push against the bottom of the engine shaft to detach the impeller from the shaft. Once detached, unthread the impeller removal tool. To reinstall the impeller, align the assembly on the engine shaft. Secure it with the wood support, then rethread the center mounting bolt. Using the 9/16" 6-point socket on a torque wrench, torque the center bolt to 50 foot-pounds. Remove the wood. Continue the reassembly by repositioning the shredder screen mounting post in the hole in the inner flail housing. Then realign the outer housing. Thread and tighten the 10 nuts and bolts to secure. Rethread the 2 upper mounting screws using the speed clips. Remove the weight and return the chipper shredder to its upright position. Slide the shredder screen pin through the impeller housing and screen. Insert the retaining pin to secure. Realign the discharge chute on the impeller housing and insert the spacers. Insert the mounting bolt, then thread and tighten the nut. Fully position the chute Then thread and tighten the retaining knob screws. Realign the shredder plate on the 6 impeller housing bolts. Reinstall the hopper assembly by aligning the support plate on the 2 upper mounting bolts first. Then rotate the assembly to align it on the impeller housing bolts. Thread and tighten all 8 mounting nuts to secure. We recommend hand threading the nuts first, then using the socket to tighten once all the nuts are in place. With the reassembly complete, the chipper shredder should be ready for use.